Now, make no mistake, we are living in the age of globalization. And on the daily basis, that pretty much around the world, the protests and riots are taking place across the continent. Over the episodes that we've been talking about the country of Ukraine and countries in Southeast Asia and even some of the crucial countries in the Middle East, but somehow there's one nation today, it's undergoing such significant political and also this economic turmoil, which is the country of Tunisia. Now, if you follow our show, that you know that within this country, not only it's just about the leadership, but also that what kind of policies and what kind of domestic policies are actually creating such chaos. So that's why today in this episode, we are going to talk about the country of Tunisia and how about the current political and also this economic chaos and how should we understand everything. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it's my great honor to introduce Ms. Zineb Riboua. Now, Zineb is a research associate and a program manager of Hudson Institute's Center for Peace and the Security in the Middle East. She specializes in China's involvement in the Middle East, North African affairs, and Israeli-Arab relations. Zineb, and welcome to The Missing Piece.
Thank you very much, Will, for having me.
You know, I want to start with something that, because, again, as we mentioned before, you are very active on social media and regarding the country of Tunisia. And I want to read something that you tweeted and recently, and this is what you said. You said today, also thinking of Tunisians, brave people, honorable history with strong value being abused by the president regime. I hope they wake up before it's too late. Now, as we mentioned before, this country is undergoing such tremendous and also, of course, tragic political and also this economic turmoil. Help us to understand what is the story behind your tweet.
Yeah, I tweeted that because I've seen how the inflation is really degrading the Tunisian economy, and I saw a video, just a heartbreaking video of Tunisians just trying to grab sugar because they have huge sugar shortages, and even when the Tunisian government made deals with India and Algeria, it was still not sufficient. So So that's why I tweeted it. But then, concerning the whole context, I mean, Tunisia knew a turmoil since the Arab Spring in 2011. They had a hard time in having a new constitution, having a new government, in adjusting in their society because they've been fighting for democracy. They truly believe that they need a system that works for the people. And despite all of these years and their resistance to any type of dictatorship, whether by the Islamists or by others, they still are struggling today with the new president, President Kais Saied. He modified the constitution. It was a huge power grab, and when I talked to a Tunisian, he basically told me that we wish actually he would have the power grab, but at least fix the economy. And he's doing neither. People are suffering right now. There's huge unemployment. I think I have a number here of the trade deficit, and the Tunisia's trade deficit increased by 57.1%, which is huge on an annual basis from January, July 2022. And so they are really struggling, economically speaking, but also politically. And so this is, I think this is, these are few things to show why I think Tunisians. I think Tunisians are very much aware of how dangerous the situation has become. But how are they going to solve it? How are they going to fight for their own basic human rights? I think this is something we should all watch very closely.
Zineb, I think During the previous answer that you just shared with us, again, you touch on so many significant points, but I want to take a step by step. Let's talk about this constitution modification. Help us to understand, because we know, again, constitution is one of the significant or rather important documents, not just for the country of Tunisia, but also pretty much for every single country. Again, as we mentioned before, we're living in the age of globalization, and we've seen how the current leaders across the world, some leaders are trying to change the constitution, or some leaders have successfully did so, and of course the results seems rather disappointing. But rather, going back to the country of Tunisia, what does that mean that president changed the constitution? And within the constitution, what has been done? Or so in other words, after changing it, do you think the constitution becomes more powerful for the country, or it actually becomes one of the significant mechanisms that which lead to the dictatorship? What do you think?
So, because I'm not an expert on the legal affairs surrounding the Tunisian constitution, what I can say after talking to a Tunisian official is that President Said, his training is that he's a professor in law. He pays attention to the legal frameworks, etc. And so this is how he sees the world and how he sees Tunisia. He doesn't have a training in economics, doesn't have a training in other related areas, and so for him, modifying the constitutional legal framework in Tunisia is the basis of whatever he's going to do. And so this is why in July. In July 25, I think 2022. That's where he did the modification. And what I think is important to keep in mind, it's that it's a personally drafted constitution. He did not consult with any of his advisors or any other Tunisians. That are close to the parliament or the government. He did it on his own, and the purpose of the draft was to concentrate as much power as possible around the presidency, and so he basically gave himself more authority, so that whenever the parliament is suspended, he would still operate. There's no check and balances anymore, and this is why I think all of the Tunisia experts and many of the people who follow Tunisia very closely were very alarmed, because it means that all the project that Tunisians fought for, it just vanished. So this is, I think, what it means. Unfortunately, I cannot give more detail because I just do not know much about the legal framework in Tunisia. But I think these are the bases. So I think it was just really a turning point, and this is why there are looming sanctions against him. Because it's just because it basically means he wants to install a dictatorship, and so yeah, this will be my answer to that.
Thank you. Now, I want to talk about the current economic turmoil in this country. Again, when we look at the chaos which related to economy, one of the countries that pop into our head, which is Sri Lanka. And again, we know that this country is such a small country, but because of this governmental corruption or this economic deficit, and we've seen that how people took their angers and frustration to the street. Now, fast forward today in Tunisia, streets are also filled with people who are angry and frustrated because this economic turmoil or this economic deadlock. Now, help us to understand how devastating is the economic situation based on the conversation that you have or you had with Tunisians, and why is it important for them to take their anger and frustration and voices to the street, and how effective has it been? What do you think?
Yeah, so I mean, that's totally true. People are immensely frustrated and they do go on protests. However, so far, I don't think that there was a massive one. But to understand the situation is that prior to the Arab Spring, Tunisia was a very important economy. I mean, we're talking about very well educated people who dedicated actually a lot of their resources to education and health. They had very good industries, especially in textile and other related industries, and so they went from that to basically having the Arab Spring, and so all the implications of it. So it was basically a whole chaos. And then once they get on their feet, they have COVID. There's COVID, and there's a pandemic, and so they really suffered from that. There's also something to note where. Tunisia relies a lot on tourism, and so during the Arab Spring, there were so many suicide bombings and so on that it kind of it made many people afraid of going to Tunisia too. So they had so. I think the major assumption was that, okay, once we have a government, we will build our industries, we will go back on track. It's true we had this whole chaos with the Arab Spring, but tourism is still a major sector, and so we need to build it up. But this is not what happened. What happened was that there was an accumulation of issues upon issue, and because the Tunisian population, it's mainly young people, and so there's huge unemployment rate right now. I think I have the number. So I found that the overall employment stands at nearly 17%, and with youth unemployment nearly double that. So the situation is really, I think it's just a boiling one, they could not recover from the pandemic, and there's also something to take into consideration because Tunisia is. There's a domestic policy part, but there's also the foreign policy part, where Tunisia cannot do much without cooperating with either neighboring countries or other countries. When you have a president like Kais, who thinks, who modified the constitution and made all these drastic changes, other countries also think, okay, this is basically a dictator. We would not want to collaborate with him. So I think this happened, especially during an event called the TDAC, the Tokyo International Cooperation. I think where it was held in Tunis, and so. There was this conference where it was basically Japan, with its companies and businesses coming to Africa so that they can extend their outreach and extend their industries, and it was based in Tunis. But because President Kais, he has his own foreign policy now, where it's not about collaborating with other countries. He invited actually a separatist, a terrorist group called the Polisario Front. He invited their president. And so he came to the conference, and it was just a unilateral decision. Of course, Japan denounced that because they do not recognize that entity. They do not understand why there is this. This organization is present at the conference where it doesn't recognize it. The same happened with Morocco. Morocco sees Tunisia as an ally. Tunisia I think most of the financial services in Tunisia are rely on Moroccan companies, so they have that type of relations. So Morocco condemned that, and so President Kais put himself and Tunisia in a situation where, in an embarrassing situation where its allies, like Morocco, felt embarrassed, and then you have Japan, who's actually very interested in getting more companies, now feeling that maybe this is not the right thing. There were also other African countries in the conference that all condemned what President Kais did, and so it's worth also looking that it's also worth noting that a lot of these domestic policy issues, they have a direct link with what President Kais is doing in the region. Yeah, I hope I answered that question.
You sure did. Now, given the fact that this sitting president, number one, as you mentioned before, is not keen on this open cooperation with any other foreign relations or any other foreign countries. And also that domestically, because the economic turmoil that really led to the price increases and also the food shortages. And of course, the result of that is we're seeing every day, and the protests and also the riots are taking place every day. Now, at the beginning, you used a very interesting word, which is called democracy. And we know that today, when we type in the word democracy in Google or any search engine, I think very likely you're the expert that you agree with me that majority of the political scientists, or even as an expert as you are, agree that democracy is actually in trouble today across the continent. I mean, not just for Tunisia, but for many other countries and for various reasons. But now let's go back to Tunisia. What does that mean today when we say the word democracy in Tunisia, and how important it is for people to continue to fight for democracy, even to preserve the meaning of democracy today?
Yeah, sure. But before I do that, I also wanted to mention something about the war in Ukraine. The war in Ukraine has an immense impact on North Africa, and you can also feel that in Ukraine, in Tunisia, because they rely on wheat and other grains, and so there is also that to heavily take into consideration. Concerning democracy, what it really means. To be frank, I think it depends on on the people. For Tunisians, it's clear that it means freedom of choice, freedom of expression. I mean, many dissidents are now in jail because of President Kais and because they opposed what he did. It also means basic human rights. I mean, you can see now how, if you tweet something, if you say something, you go to jail. And so I think it just, I do not like to use that term just in abstract. I think it's important to contextualize it, especially, you can see how things are now in Iran, where they don't even talk about democracy. They really just want to live and to exist as they are because of how the regime wiped out all their rights. So I think I'd approach it from that perspective. As I said, Tunisians are very well educated people, and they have a long history of debate and of a democratic way of living and of especially of the political life. So I think this is I think it's worth also looking at the history of Tunisians in that regard. And so it's truly sad that now they are struggling with it. But I think as of you've seen me tweeting before, I do not think that Tunisians will will not fight. I think just knowing how they operate, I do not think that they will let it go. I think it will be very important and crucial in next months and next years to follow closely the situation. I think it's a boiling one, and so it's really a ticking bomb. I don't think they will just stay and say, oh, actually we will follow whatever President Kai says. So yeah, I think that's how I see it.
Zineb, I know your time is very precious, and I got two more questions before letting you go. And also, you briefly touched on the country of Iran. Of course, going back to your social media, you also tweeted something regarding the country of Iran as well. Again, lately, because of one girl's death, that really created this political and also this social unrest within the country, which draws attention across the world. And everyone is also paying attention to the reaction from the government and also understand what is the political system and what is the economic system is going on in the country of Iran. So quickly, from your perspective, how much do you think the government today, or the Iranian government today, is willing to change the political or even the social policies because the whole world has already found out the death of because the one innocent lives. So in other words, every life matter. Now, at this moment, how much do you think that really served as a strong message to the government of Iran at this moment?
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting question, because the way I see it is that even if they want to do a reform, no one will listen to them. They have lost complete legitimacy. They are seen as as occupiers of Iran because of the Islamic Republic. They are no longer welcome. I think you've seen some videos in Balochistan, for example, where they are chasing officials. They are chasing IRGC officials. They really see them as no longer welcome in the country. And so even if they want a reform, even if they want to do like a reform and have Iranians all together again, I think the message is clear when they say because they're not saying, oh, we want a reform of hijab, we want more houses, we want more employment. No, they are saying death to Khamenei. They are saying down with the Islamic Republic. They should go. So I think this is why it's a very different situation. I know. This is not the first time there are protests happened in Iran. There were many, especially with the Green Revolution and some others. But you can see today how this is very different. There is one slogan, and there's no special social class. It's not the poor asking for more. It's all people asking for one thing, which is to have the regime down. I do not know how it will play out. I do not know, as we talk, if these protests will continue, but I think this will have severe implications. I think Iran will not be the same after these protests. And I do not think that for the Ayatollahs to come out with a reform will fix it.
I want to wrap up our conversation a bit, again, going back to this economic conversation, also related to the country of Iran. We know from the Western side that sanctions after sanctions have been placed upon Iran, which is very crucial for the country, because we know that after being placed on the sanctions, and that could basically cut off the major economic income or economic resources for the country. And of course, that people are the victims of the sanctions. Now, my last question is, if the Iranian government realized that because of the political behaviors and because of the social unrest, that more people are going to suffer and more people are going to be frustrated with the government, what is the attitude of the government today? Do they actually care about the people, or they simply just wanted to continue their ideology or continue this power-grabbing greed? What do you think?
Yeah, it's a very timely question because just to go back to what you said, the sanctions, there were really massive sanctions during the Trump administration, and they were only implemented for 18 months. So I think we have not. If they continued, Iran would have stopped a lot of its malign activities against America and against a lot of its neighboring countries, because whether you if you lift sanctions, and you think the money will go to the people, I think people are immensely mistaken, because Iran, whatever resources they have, they go to its proxies in Yemen, they go to Hezbollah, they go to the Polisario Front, they never go to to the people. I think I've talked to an Iranian American lately, and they basically told me how there is a whole city now in ruin, and it used to be one of the most beautiful cities. So it's if Western governments want to help the people, they actually should impose sanctions. When I went to the protests, for example, I could see how people they were asking for more sanctions. They were even saying no deal with Iran, just a nuclear deal. So I think there's definitely a new foreign policy that needs to be implemented to not just help the people of Iran, because they do massively want to turn to just change the regime, but also to protect Western interests, especially American ones. So I think this will be a huge debate, and it is now a huge debate on what should be done. You can see how Canada now is also imposing sanctions. They even, I think, considering to put IRGC on a terrorist list. Yeah, I think we'll see how other countries will respond to that. For now, of course, I believe that more sanctions will actually coerce the regime, will also turn down the whole terrorism activities, and of course it makes no sense to appease and normalize with a regime that is slaughtering its own people. Actually, as we're talking, I received this message this morning. How about today? It will be called the Friday Massacre, because they are just killing thousands of people. So the situation is very worrisome.
Well, I have to say it's rather devastating to know that innocent lives are basically the result of any political or any social unrest, which is very sad to hear, and of course it's even much sadder to understand or comprehend the whole concept. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I am so honored to speak to Ms. Zineb Riboua, and she's a research associate and a program manager of Hudson Institute Center for Peace and Security in the Middle East. She specializes in China's involvement in the Middle East, North African affairs, and Israeli-Arab relations. Thank you so much for taking your time to join the show. Again, we really appreciate your insights and regarding the country of Tunisia and also the country of Iran. And we love to have you back on the show as we continue to follow the progress and to continue to pay attention to this political and social, most importantly, economic situations in any of the countries. So thank you so much for doing this.